we have an authentic conversation about direction and purpose of meaning when it comes to your career, how many of you would step to the head of the class and admit you have it all figured out? Are you someone who has clearness of thought and clarity when it comes to the direction of your career, your values, and personal growth objectives when it comes to your professional aspirations and ambition? Are you comfortable in your own skin and the environment you work in? Well, my friends, or are you on the other side of the ledger according to the Society of Human Resources Management, who report more than a third of today's career-minded professionals, 34%, aged 18 to 24, believe that they can no longer use their current skills to sustain gainful employment and passion for the job. 33% of people believe that they can't control the next chapter in their pending careers. And finally, more than half, 55% say that they're afraid to take a leap of faith and the next step towards advancement and equality of opportunity. Helping young professionals carve out their ideal careers and create a positive future of growth professionally is the passion for my friend Daniel de Vries. He's a career coach who is on a mission to empower 1 million young people to get promoted and carve out a pathway to obtaining their dream careers. De Vries has over 20 years of experience in climbing the corporate ladder, ascending to senior positions of leadership and influence. De Vries has also gone on a personal journey of growth and self-discovery and determination. He found his own way to a six-figure salary by the time he was 27 and stepping into executive roles by the time he was 36. And along the way, he learned the unspoken truth of career advancement, and now he's personally dedicated to making sure that young people avoid the pitfalls that he encountered and ensuring that their clarity of purpose as it relates to their careers is as clear as possible. And De Vries joined me all the way from Australia for this international conversation about career development and advancement. And my conversation with De Vries starts right now. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Dad, if you're ready, I'll wish you a good day, my friend, and I want to thank you for being here to talk to me all about career diversification and advancement, my friend. Great to be with you today, and thank you for a few minutes.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So, Dad, I'm wondering if we could start our conversation by asking you, what do you think effective career development and placement and advancement means to you. What do you think those three things have in common, and what do they most mean to you, my friend? I'm curious.
So, so the I guess from my point of view, or the things that I believe in, when it comes to your career, it can't be just one thing. It has to be, in my opinion, a mix of all of the things that I think are important to get out of your career, and that comes from fulfillment, satisfaction, those things that make us feel like we're doing something meaningful and purposeful, and then something that we feel confident and good at, something that we're highly skilled at, or that we've built up a skill base or we've built up a capability throughout our career, however long it may have been so far. And then finally, something that will support a lifestyle. We all, unfortunately, well, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, we live in a world where we all have bills to pay. I'm sure you can relate to that. We all have to pay our bills. We've got, rent, we got food, we've got all those things. And by bringing together those three elements about, what you're good at, or what you excel at, what you enjoy and are you passionate about, and you create fulfillment and purpose in your life, and then creates that lifestyle that you wish to have. Those three things, trying to balance all of those, for me, is what creates that well-rounded career that's going to be really satisfying. And I think that's what everyone's trying to achieve in some sense or another.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dad, I've always heard the saying, if you don't work a day in your life, if you find something you love to do, you don't work a day in your life. So I'm curious, what do you think it means to marry your desire with your career aspiration?
So when it comes to that saying, which we've all heard a lot of times, find something you love and you won't work a day in your life. I don't think it's a perfect saying. I don't think it is always entirely accurate. I think that even when you find something you love, for example, what I'm doing right now, talking to people about their careers, helping people with their careers, I do love it, but it doesn't mean that I don't work a day in my life. There's always, always, always. I think it's unrealistic to expect that you're going to love every single aspect and every single element of what you do all the time. My kind of golden rule is that I like to aim for 80%. If 80% of the time I'm doing stuff I love and enjoy and I don't feel like it's work, for me, that's an absolute win. That is as good as it gets. I mean, and that's an average over time, of course. But I find that, yeah, the idea that you'll never feel like you're ever working, I think that's a little bit of a furphy, personally.
Yeah, absolutely. The grind never stops, right?
There's always some grind part to what we do, even if you love it. Like, I love doing this. I'm sure you love doing this too, right? That's why you do it. But there is some grind element to it. And there is a piece of it that is sometimes you just don't feel like doing. But I think that accepting that and knowing that that is a part to every career, and just understanding and believing that it's okay for those things to be there is going to be a grind. I think that helps you get through those, pieces of it that are less enjoyable.
Yeah, and Dad, tell me, what do you think it means to carve out a career path that also nurtures your well-being? What does that mean to you, my friend?
I think that is extremely important. I think that there has been a culture, I guess, and there still is to a certain extent in some places, about the hustle, the grind, and it being the output and the outcome being more important than that well-rounded, holistic, being a person kind of approach. There is obviously a strong emphasis on earning. There's making money is, I think it's important, but some people will prioritize it over their personal well-being sometimes. And I've been in that situation myself, where and I would say not necessarily on purpose. Sometimes we get into these positions or places that we don't realize what we're doing, when we're prioritizing our career over our health or over our well-being or over our mental health. And sometimes myself included, it takes a little bit longer than ideally it should have to realize that you may have got your priorities a little bit mixed up, and it ends up taking a toll on your health. Physical symptoms, mental symptoms, all kinds of things that don't allow us to live that more well-rounded life where we have time for the things that we love, even if we love our work, and time to relax, and time to chill out, and time to spend with family and friends and hobbies and all of the other things that make our life complete. And I think that if you are just chasing the money, so to speak, for most people that I know that have a really hard focus on chasing the money, it ends up taking some kind of toll on their life in some way. And most people learn that lesson the hard way, myself included. I got to a point where I felt like I was burnt out, and burnout is real. I'm sure you would agree. Burning out is certainly something that occurs, and it happens. And it happens because I think it's a sign to reassess our priorities.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Dad, I want to talk about your own personal journey because, as you mentioned, that you've had to overcome obstacles in life and in business, and, career burnout is something I'll ask you in a minute. But I'm curious to ask you about your own personal journey and what you learned about yourself through going through struggles that has made you a better person today. Today, my friend, what are your thoughts then?
So yeah, I definitely, not that long ago, was very career focused, and so much so that it was taking, relentless pursuit of success. I've always been someone who is driven. I'm driven to achieve things, and I let that drive to achieve definitely focused on one very narrow area, which was work, and it was helpful. It made me successful in my work, but what it did was detract and remove some of the value from the rest of my life. And at the time, I didn't realize that at all. It was, there was COVID was going on as well, and there's lots of things going on, and I can make plenty of excuses at the end of the day. But ultimately, there came a point where, I was experiencing some physical symptoms, really bad headaches, feeling like the stress levels being really high. And I thought I was thriving on the stress. But ultimately it brought me to a point where I needed to reassess my priorities. And I think everyone hits the realization point at a different piece. But I was so laser focused on what I considered to be career success, I didn't even really think about what success meant to me personally. I kind of tied myself to this external, societal expectation, or what I believed to be a societal expectation of what success looks like in a career, or, in life. And so eventually, yeah, I hit that point where I couldn't do it anymore, and I had to move on to something new. And if I could have my time over again, or if I would have done it perfectly in retrospect, getting to that breaking point is, that's the least optimum way of getting to that point. Being able to have the self-awareness to step back and take a little look at what you're doing regularly, even when things are good. I think that's the big lesson I learned, is now I can take the time, a few times a year at least, to have a sit down and go, how are things going? What are things like? Don't wait for that sign. Don't wait for that point that, the point of no return where you have to make change. Have those regular check-ins with yourself. And that's probably the biggest lesson that I learned through that process.
Yeah, it's important to have that mental and psychological check-in with ourselves, isn't it? It's important for self-reflection, isn't it?
100% agree. And I was honestly a bit naive on that front. And I'm actually really glad that I learned that lesson, because it's paid off. I feel like it's paid off for me. I feel like I'm definitely more in control, and I have a better understanding of myself and where my limits are, which means I can focus my energy on the things that matter.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dad, let's talk about career burnout, my friend. I relate to this because, Dad, I was born with a cerebral palsy. So I always feel, because of my disability, that sometimes I have to go a million miles a minute to prove myself over my non-disabled counterparts. But it's also, as I said, important to take some time for self-care, isn't it? So let's talk about career burnout and the importance of finding ways to effectively manage it, my friend.
It's a really big topic at the moment. It's been quite a big topic. Even I think it kind of started to become, at least in my visibility, as COVID was starting to happen around the world, and people were working from home more, and the lines were becoming blurred more and more between home life or non-work life and work life. And having personally experienced what I would consider maybe not an extreme burnout, but definitely some sense of burnout, and knowing quite a few people who have reached that point themselves too, it's hard to put into words. It's hard to explain to someone who's never experienced that level of stress or that level of that feeling just fatigued and tired and all the time, and but also missing that self understanding to know where it's coming from, or even maybe subconsciously or unconsciously, but you refuse to acknowledge it because you've tied so much self-worth and the value of yourself up in this persona of who you are at work. And so, these two pieces of you battling against each other. You've got, well, my self-worth and my value. I tie, who I am to what I do. And then, you put all that energy into it. And then what you're doing is taking a toll on your physical and your mental health. And the two things are clashing and they're battling it out. And then eventually one of them has to give. And it's almost always your health. And that burnout experience it's real. I've spoken to a lot of people who have experienced the burnout, and it's very difficult to overcome for a lot of people, myself included. It's an internal struggle to accept in yourself that you've probably pushed it too hard, and to give yourself that talking to in yourself to let you know, hey, you probably need to make a change here. Otherwise, who knows what could happen.
Yeah, and on the complete opposite end of that spectrum, Dan, I know you're on a mission to help 1 million people sort of achieve career clarity, my friend. And you've gone so far as to offer free coaching sessions and consultations if that's what it takes, my friend. So tell me about
Yep.
your mission and how it's going, my friend.
It's early days on the march to 1 million, but I am quite sure that at some point I'm going to be able to reach that 1 million. So I do, and so I do give free one-on-one sessions. I've done more than 200 in the last 2 years, and I'm also trying to come up with ways that I can reach bigger audiences and influence more people and impact more people and help them to overcome, if there's one small lesson that I learned the hard way that I can share with someone so they don't have to learn it the hard way, for me, that's a success. If I can prevent someone from going through some kind of pain or some kind of, difficult time purely by saying, hey, I did this. If you could avoid that, you'll save yourself a whole bunch of pain and time and money. Then those are the things that I'm really trying to achieve on this, supporting 1 million people to improve their careers and henceforth improve their life as well. Because, our careers are a huge part of our lives, whether we like to admit it or not. And so the road to 1 million, I do all sorts of things. I do live one-on-one coaching sessions with people, but I do LinkedIn live, workshops. I'll do TikTok lives where I just go on and say, ask me anything about your career. And I'll just go on there and just, people will just fire questions out at me. I'm going to do live sessions, coaching, answering, trying to help people through whatever issue that they're experiencing at the time. And so, yeah, that march to 1 million, I think it's going to take me a long time, but I'm pretty dedicated to making that happen. And if it means that I can get in front of bigger audiences. I'd like to be doing, talks in front of larger groups of people, helping even more at a time. If I can help more people at one time, that's what I want to do.
Yeah, absolutely, my friend. And, I also wanted to ask you about creating or achieving career prosperity and the factors that you think most represent achieving that, my friend. So what does that mean to you to achieve career prosperity?
For me, career prosperity it's that happy balance of achieving a well-rounded career that provides for you in all of the ways that we need to be provided for as people. We have emotional needs, we have psychological needs, we have physical needs, we have, economic needs. And if you can create the career, I should say that, because people talk a lot about finding things, but in reality, what we do is we create them. Our careers are created by ourselves. We don't stumble upon what we do. We either consciously choose to create something or we float through. And so that creating the career that can fill those needs that you have as a person, for me, that's about career prosperity. So the prosperity is not just making money. It's making money to support your lifestyle, excuse me, and it's making you happy, and it's making you content and fulfilled. And for most people, that means that you're influencing something bigger than yourself. And that well-roundedness of the career, that's for me what prosperity means.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Dad, I also wanted to talk to you about internal motivation when you're on your career journey, nurturing sort of a well-being and acquiring new skills to be successful in overcoming adversity. Because, when you're on a career path, not a lot of people today stay in the same job for 10 to 15 to 20 years. So what do you think is the key to creating that career internal motivation to sort of light an internal fire? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think it's a really important piece to have that intrinsic internal motivation to push yourself forward. If you rely on external motivations, which a lot of us do, and I have in the past, you push yourself towards, if you're using external motivations, you run the real risk of pursuing something that doesn't end up being meaningful to you. And I can tell you from some of the people that I've worked with who have pursued something for, say, 5 years and then reached their goals that they set and realized once they reached that target or that goal that it actually wasn't what they wanted. And it feels so unsatisfying to have spent 5 years pursuing something that you really thought was what you wanted, reaching the finish line and realizing that, oh, this isn't what I expected. This isn't what I wanted. And then having that harsh realization that, well, now what do I do? How do I know what to pursue? And so for me and for my clients that I work with, creating the internal motivation comes from understanding yourself really well and understanding your personal values and what you care about, what matters to you personally. And that is not some trivial task. If you talk to someone, just, a random person, and ask them, do you know what your values are, your personal values, what you care about most? And most people will have a small idea. They'll, say family and friends or things like that. But really, deep down, do you care about helping other people, or are you about creating joy, or are you about the creative process? And there are so many things to consider and think about, and it's a time-consuming, introspective process. But once you've done that and you can understand those core intrinsic values that you have that you care about more than anything else, that's how you can create that internal drive to get to where you want to go, because you know what you value, you know what you care about, and you can pursue things that will push you closer to doing those things that you care about and that you value most. And I find that if you know what those things are and you make decisions to push yourself closer to those things or towards those things that you care about, those values, you get that positive feedback loop internally on the way, and that allows you to keep pushing harder and harder and continue to keep pushing in the face of the adversity that we all will face throughout our careers.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dad, I asked you earlier about burnout, but on the other side of the spectrum, I also wanted to ask you about balance and happiness. How do you think we can create career balance and happiness? How do you think those two things are interconnected?
So people talk a lot about work-life balance is one piece. I prefer to use the term work-life integration because for me, work is part of your life. It's not the opposite of your life. It's not, I have my work and then I have my life. For me, and this is the way that I talk to the people that I talk to, integrating those two in a way that makes them sustainable is the key. And so there's always going to be a battle for your attention. There's a million things we all want to do. There's a million things we all have to do. And so being able to balance them by integrating them into one holistic life and how you approach all of the things in your life, that's the way that you can create, you can deal with the tension between those pieces of your life. And from that, when you don't feel like you're giving up something or you're being forced to give something up, that can really, if you feel like you're being forced to give something up to do something else that you don't want, that can really detract from your happiness and it can really detract from that feeling of balance. And likewise, if you don't spend enough time, if you're focusing on your career, you miss out on the opportunities and you don't have that balance that's going to provide for you in future. You're playing the short term versus the long term game. And so for me, finding that knife's edge, it really is a knife's edge, and it's constantly moving around. And so finding the knife's edge and staying as close to it as you can, to make sure that you're not, I guess, giving away happiness for some short-term career prosperity opportunities, but you're not focusing so heavily on your career that you are making yourself miserable. And so that the happiness piece and balance is definitely, it's a fine line. It's a knife's edge, as I say. And we are all, I believe, constantly working to try and maintain that balance and sit teetering just on the edge of that knife so that we can stay in that, I guess, that optimum place. And look, none of us are going to sit on the knife permanently. We're going to wave back and forth and we're going to, make mistakes as we all do. But ultimately keeping that concept in mind helps you to do, like we were talking about earlier, sit down, have those self-reflection moments and think about, okay, which direction am I heading in right now? And which direction do I need to adjust?
Yeah, absolutely. And Dad, as I mentioned earlier, buddy, I have cerebral palsy, and I also talk to businesses and executives about the positive benefits of hiring folks with disabilities. So I'm curious to ask you, how do you think we can continue to create inclusive career pathways for individuals with disabilities? What are your thoughts there?
I think inclusivity is a benefit in itself. I think by having people of all abilities, but also of all walks of life, of all backgrounds, of all capabilities, and of all opinions, what you're doing is bringing in that diverse thinking. And that's the diversity of thinking, I think, is the most important piece behind that. By including everyone in that process, what you're doing is you're allowing yourself to see things outside of your own narrow worldview. And the narrow worldview or the narrow perspectives, that is, from a business perspective, it's a risk. It's a risk that you're going to miss something. It's a risk that you're going to be beat out by your competitors. And it's a risk that you are not going to achieve those long-term business outcomes that all businesses hope to achieve. That's why we get into business. And so including people from all backgrounds, including all levels of ability and those with disabilities, really brings it brings perspectives that you don't otherwise get. So, you could definitely share with me perspectives that I would never be able to come up with on my own. It's just not, your lived experience is different from mine. And that gives you different perspectives and an ability to see things in a different way, which really helps me to miss making mistakes and making errors. And likewise, I can help you do the same thing because we're not the same, and because we share something in common, but we don't share everything in common. And by bringing all of those diverse perspectives together, that's where I think the real value is created, by being inclusive.
Yeah, and then I'm curious to ask you about your time at Helen Mods, my friend, where you leveraged your emerging capabilities and uh, you came up with highly innovative solutions when it came to uh, career sort of advancement in the defense and aerospace sector. So I'm curious, my friend, if you can tell me about your time there and what you got out of it.
Absolutely. So that company, Helimods, is an absolutely amazing company here in Australia. It's a small business, at least compared to what I'm used to working for. Before that, I was working for large multinational corporates, and they punch well above their weight in terms of what they deliver into the aerospace sector internationally from a small little town here in Australia. And so that was my first foray outside of big multinational corporates into the world of smaller and medium-sized businesses. And I learned so much. I thought I naively, honestly, I had naively thought that I knew a lot about how business operated, and how to manage teams and how to support people and how to help people with their careers as well. And it was very eye-opening for me. I learned so much about the differences of how you operate in that different environment. Their constraints, the things that they have to deal with, are just totally and entirely different to when you work for a big multinational company that's publicly listed and has lots of financial resources. And so that was really eye-opening for me, and it helped me learn even more about that diversity of experience. And so that by being able to move into a role that has less support elements, and has different kinds of constraints, but also different kinds of opportunities to go and pursue things, it really opened my eyes, and it helped me to become a little bit less narrow-minded or narrow-sighted, and really understand the world of business a lot better. Because I'd been, to be quite frank, I'd been in a very similar businesses before that. Before this role, I'd been in lots of similar businesses, and they were all, quite similar. And so, I thought that was how the world worked. Naively, I thought that, oh, well, this is how everything works, because I've been in 4 different, large companies, and they all seemed to operate in kind of a similar fashion. And then I moved into this smaller business, and it really opened my eyes, and it definitely helped me beyond just the workplace. It helped me understand that there is so much out there that we don't know, that we haven't experienced, and we're foolish. I was foolish, and we would be foolish to make assumptions that we kind of have it all figured out, because I certainly don't have it all figured out.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I also know that congratulations are in order, Dan, because you were awarded the Griffin Award for Academic Excellence in 2023, my friend. And now you own a company called AIC Connect, my friend, which is dedicated to connecting Australian businesses to the defense industry, my friend. So congratulations on the award. And I'm curious, what does it mean to you, and how has being an entrepreneur helped you to develop a flexible business approach, my friend? Tell me more.
So the Griffith Award was, I was doing my MBA at the time, and I graduated. Thankfully, that was a long 3 years, but it was worth it, definitely, in my opinion. But I really enjoyed the process of doing my MBA at Griffith University, and it was part of the catalyst that drove me towards starting my own business, and deciding to become an entrepreneur. And so becoming an entrepreneur has been challenging, and it has it tests, in my experience, it tests every single fiber of your being. It tests all of your skills. It tests all of your capabilities. It tests your resolve. It tests. For me, it's just tested everything about my life. It's really, but at the same time, it's been very satisfying and so rewarding psychologically, because building something for me is building and creativity is one of my core personal values that I get satisfaction and joy out of. And so building something that I feel is worthwhile has been a really big driver to help me stick to it, because the road is tough and it's long. And so, yeah, it's been an experience, and it's going to continue to be an experience, I believe. But I'm here to stick it through and make something out of it for the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dan, I've got two questions left. And the first question for you, my friend, is how do you define joy in life? What do you think that means to you?
That's a really difficult question to articulate, but for me, joy is it's a very difficult to explain emotion and feeling. And for me, I can only use examples of when I feel joy. Typically, it comes for me when I'm around other people and I'm seeing them and helping them be the best version of themselves. And that's everyone from the people that I work with in the coaching space to the people that I work with in my aerospace businesses, to my own daughter, who, when I see her solve a problem for herself and see that joy on her face, that immediately brings joy into my heart at the same time. Those are kind of the examples. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dan, my final question for you today has to do with your own personal and professional legacy, my friend, and how you want that to be defined.
So I'm not a huge believer in legacy, meaning legacy about me and wanting people to remember me for who I was. But if my view on legacy is about the impact that you can make to future generations, regardless of whether they remember your name or not, or whether it was, hey, that Dan did that for us, whatever. For me, the legacy is about being able to leave the world a better place for the next generations, and being able to have a positive impact on people's lives to help them experience, a more fulfilling life and a more joyous life. And that comes in many different ways. For me, I focus on supporting people with their careers, but that legacy is more, I just want to see good be done, and I want to be someone who does those good things. And for me, that's my own legacy, but I don't necessarily want to be remembered for it. I just want to see, for my own sake, the impact and the value that I can bring.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dan, finally, tell me, if people want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that?
So the best way is to look me up on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. I'm a bit of a tragic there. If you're not a LinkedIn fan, I am on TikTok regularly. I do TikTok lives most days. And beyond that, you can just go to dandevries.com and book a time to chat with me if you'd like to. And welcome that to anyone who would like to do it.
Well, Dan, as I told you at the outset of our conversation, I was super excited to engage in conversation with you, my friend, because I know that we both share a mutual passion for career development and diversification, my friend. I want to thank you for your leadership in this space and for joining me today. It's most appreciated.
Thanks, Kevin. I really enjoyed it. And thank you for having me, because without people like you running these kinds of podcasts, people like me can't have these kinds of conversations.